Two names, one lie. In a live congressional showdown, Jasmine Crockett exposes Kash Patel for running a secret network built to erase national security crimes and dodge oversight. He denies everything until she plays the recording. He freezes. His career collapses. What did Jasmine say that made Kash Patel vanish overnight? Stay with us. This is a story worth every second of your time. The hearing room at the Rayburn House office building was more crowded than usual. Cameras blinked along the back wall, expecting another routine afternoon on Capitol Hill. But this wasn't a typical oversight hearing. On the witness seat sat Kash Patel, former senior advisor in Donald Trump's National Security Council. Across from him, Representative Jasmine Crockett, sharp-tongued and fearless, was ready for war. This wasn't just politics. It was far more serious. A covert communications system allegedly designed to evade oversight, bypass the Freedom of Information Act, and bury national security failures. For months, rumors of encrypted channels and wiped metadata had circulated quietly. Today, Jasmine Crockett was ready to speak them out loud. The hearing hadn't even reached its first question when Jasmine dropped the hammer. She looked straight at Patel, eyes cold, voice sharp. "Mr. Patel," she said, "I'm alleging the existence of a covert communication system, deliberately created to evade government oversight, bypass the Freedom of Information Act, and conceal breaches in national security reporting." Her words didn't just echo, they detonated. A few staffers jolted. One senator raised an eyebrow. The casual atmosphere of a typical Capitol Hill hearing was gone, replaced by something electric and dangerous. Patel didn't flinch. He sat back in his chair, adjusted his tie like this was nothing new. "Congresswoman," he replied with a cool smile, "there is no such system, none that I've ever seen. These accusations sound more like fantasy than fact." He said it smoothly, like he'd practiced the line in front of a mirror. A few people in the room gave polite nods, buying into the illusion that the former national security official still had everything under control. But Jasmine didn't blink. She didn't smile. She didn't even breathe deep. Instead, she leaned in slightly and dropped the temperature of the room 10 degrees. "If it doesn't exist," she said, voice flat and deadly, "then explain how I can describe exactly how it works, down to the encryption protocols, the off-grid routing, and the specific internal language used to classify red zone dispatches." Her hand hovered over a manila folder on the desk like a loaded weapon. "I'm not speculating. I've read it, I've seen it, and I've tracked its footprint." For a split second, Patel's expression faltered. Not enough for the cameras to catch, but enough for the room to feel it. A quiet unease spread through the committee. People who thought they were in for a routine grilling started sitting up straighter. Phones lowered, chairs creaked. Every eye turned to Patel. And that's when the silence hit. Not the kind that waits politely, but the kind that dares someone to lie. Jasmine didn't say another word. She didn't have to. The tension was now alive, pulsing through the floor. Patel's smirk had vanished. The whole chamber was staring at him like they were waiting for a mask to fall, and Jasmine had just tugged the first thread. The silence from Jasmine's last blow still hung in the air, like smoke after an explosion. But she didn't let it settle. No smirk, no pause, just a cold shift in strategy. She straightened a single sheet of notes as if brushing away the dust from a loaded weapon, then looked up with the calm precision of someone who already knew the ending. "Mr. Patel," she said, voice deceptively soft, "how often did you communicate directly with field operations while serving in national security?" Patel blinked just once. "Occasionally," he replied, "only through official briefings." Jasmine nodded slightly like a teacher letting a student believe he passed the quiz. "And during those briefings, did you ever authorize communications through non-government channels? For urgency, for discretion?" His head shook before the question even finished. "Never. Absolutely not." She tilted her head, feigning acceptance. "Understood." Then came another question, dry as sand. "Were you familiar with terms like RZ Dispatch or Echo 17 used in your department?" A flicker crossed Patel's face. "No," he said slower this time. "Not that I recall." Jasmine didn't flinch. She moved on. A third question, document retention policies. A fourth, who had clearance to initiate red zone communication filters? A fifth, when were logs purged? To anyone watching, it looked like she was wandering. To Patel, it probably felt like he was winning, but he wasn't. 15 minutes in, it happened. A hairline fracture. Jasmine had slowly wrapped a noose of logic around him, and now the slack was gone. Patel contradicted himself, a subtle slip between the use of encrypted terms and the official clearance timeline. It was small, but Jasmine caught it like a hunter spotting a pulse in the brush. She stopped. The pause was surgical. Then, without raising her voice, without changing her breath, she reached for the manila folder as if she'd been waiting her whole life to open it. "Let's try this a different way," she said. Her fingers slid out a single page. She held it up, not theatrically, but with a slow, precise tension, like revealing the blade of a knife inch by inch. "This one," she said, "is a memo dated March 9th, 2022. It refers to rerouting national security briefings through a secure relay node, codenamed W Staff Line. It was never submitted to congressional records, but it has something else far more important." She paused just long enough for every camera to zoom in. "Your signature. Right here. Bottom left." The room froze. Every muscle in Patel's face tried not to react, and failed. His voice came out thinner than before. That doesn't look official. I've never seen that version." "Is it your signature or not?" Jasmine asked, not blinking. "I'm happy to verify it through authentication." He opened his mouth, closed it. A tiny drop of sweat gathered at his temple. "It could be a draft," he muttered. "Maybe internal use. Not finalized. I'm not sure." That's when Jasmine leaned in, eyes narrowed like a lens-locking focus. Her next words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. "Would you like me to pull up the metadata now?" she asked, her voice quiet as a whisper, sharp as a scalpel. "Because I can. And if I do, we'll see the server, the timestamp, and the login credentials. We'll see that it was printed at 2:13 a.m. And by who?" No one moved. No one breathed. Even Patel stopped blinking. In that moment, the hearing didn't feel like politics anymore. It felt like the beginning of a public indictment, with Jasmine Crockett writing the opening statement and Patel running out of exits. Patel didn't answer, but his silence was louder than any denial. Jasmine had already shifted. With a sharp nod to the technician, the room darkened just enough for the screen behind Patel to come alive. No fanfare, just a cold, glowing rectangle, ready to bear what words could no longer spin. The footage was raw, timestamp glowing in the corner. 2:13 in the morning, March 9th, year 2022. A grainy hallway, a secure office door creaked open. Patel's assistant stepped in, shoulders tense. He moved like he'd done it before, plugged in a flash drive, clicked through files, and hit print. Moments later, the printer beside the desk hissed to life. A single sheet slid out. The assistant grabbed it, paused, folded it neatly into an envelope marked W Staff Line, and left without looking back. Jasmine let the silence settle again, just long enough for the tension to burn. Then she spoke, calm and clinical. "That printer," she said, tapping her folder once, "is a Lexmark model 443-DN. Serial number 5K800M9F21. The internal system logs show that specific printer was used at exactly 2:13 in the morning to print this memo." She held the page up slowly. "And embedded in the document header is the unique machine signature, along with the full device network address, 172.22.1.77. Patel scoffed. He chuckled bitterly, shaking his head like he was listening to bad stand-up. "Really?" He said, loud enough for the microphones. "This is your big reveal? A printer log. Come on, Congresswoman. What's next? Barcodes and ghost stories." A few aides stifled nervous laughter. He leaned back with mock confidence. "You've clearly watched too many crime dramas." Jasmine didn't react. She just turned to face him, slow and measured, like ice forming across glass. "This memo," she said, holding it steady, "references a classified reroute of national security briefings through a concealed relay system labeled W Staff Line. It was never filed in the congressional records, but it carries something far more interesting: your full signature. That smirk vanished. Patel's neck stiffened. His fingers tightened around the edge of the table. That, that's not an official document, he barked. It's a draft, an internal talking point. Not final, not cleared, certainly not submitted. Jasmine didn't blink. And yet, she said softly, you signed it. And it was delivered. He raised his voice cracking. You don't get to decide what's official. You think one late-night print job is proof? I didn't authorize anything. You're spinning shadows. Then she leaned in, voice lower, colder, deadlier. What kind of draft, she said slowly, comes with a signed receipt in confirmation of delivery? The question hit like a blade. Patel opened his mouth, then closed it. Again. His breath caught in his throat. Whatever counterpunch he had rehearsed, it crumbled the moment his eyes met hers. Because he knew. She had him. And this time, the room wasn't laughing. It was waiting, watching, daring him to say one more word. But for the first time that day, Kash Patel said nothing. Patel's silence didn't save him. It doomed him. The room hadn't moved, but something in the air had shifted. It was the feeling right before thunder, when people hold their breath without realizing it. Jasmine didn't break the tension. She harnessed it. With one steady motion, she flipped a page and exposed the next live wire. I'm entering one more document into the record, she said, not looking at Patel. Her voice was low, calm, dangerously calm. She slid a transcript across the table, its contents printed in clean, black ink, but dripping with implications. This message was extracted from your department's encrypted relay logs, time-stamped 2 days before your memo. She paused just long enough for silence to lean forward. It reads, off the radar, clean, no trace. The words hit like a cold slap. Patel flinched. Subtle, but enough. Then he snapped. This is ridiculous, he barked, waving dismissively like a magician caught mid-trick. You're turning fragments into fairy tales. That could mean anything. You don't know the context. He leaned forward, voice rising with heat. This isn't oversight. It's theater. Political theater. Jasmine didn't blink. Not once. She turned her eyes on him like a spotlight trained on a fugitive. Her voice came soft but carried like thunder. If there's nothing to hide, she asked, why would anyone need to be off the radar? Why would anyone want it clean, with no trace? She leaned in slightly. This wasn't a slip. This wasn't an accident. This was strategy. This was a blueprint for evasion. And you know it. Patel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. That's when the chairman leaned into his mic, voice like a slab of granite. Let the witness be reminded, he said, staring directly at Patel, that lying under oath in this chamber constitutes a felony offense. Perjury carries criminal consequences. Consider that before you speak again. The temperature dropped. Reporters froze mid-sentence. Phones stopped recording. Even the air conditioning seemed to quiet. Patel sat rigid, eyes darting to the paper in front of him like it might bite. And Jasmine? She didn't smile. She just turned the page, like this was never about breaking him. It was about what came next. Patel hadn't spoken for over a minute, but his silence was now screaming. Sweat glistened at his temple. His hand hovered just above the table, like it couldn't decide whether to grab something or brace for impact. Then, without warning, Jasmine shifted her gaze toward the side door. Calm, focused, like she'd been waiting for this precise second. The door creaked open, every head turned. A woman stepped in, tall, composed, her steps deliberate, like she was walking through smoke with a match in her hand. Gas rippled through the room even before her name was spoken. Melinda Kash, the former assistant who had vanished months ago, now walking back into the fire with no fear in her eyes. She didn't flinch. She walked straight to the witness seat like she was born for it. She took her place and adjusted the microphone. No hesitation. I was instructed to erase my name from all digital archives, she said, voice steady and stripped of emotion. Right after we finalized a document internally called the Playbook. It outlined how to scrub trails, redirect classified communications, and ensure nothing flagged for public access or congressional visibility. Her hand went into her satchel and came out with a thick folder. She held it up, firm. These are the emails, the access logs, the instructions, all of it. A wave of static tension rolled through the chamber. Jasmine walked up, accepted the folder with the quiet reverence of someone holding a smoking gun. She opened it slowly, page by page, her eyes scanning line after line. Codes, sender fields, terminal IDs. Each flip of paper felt like thunder. And then she stopped, looked up, straight at Patel. He was pale now, breathing through his mouth. A tremor flickered across his jaw. And then he broke. "She's lying," he snapped, slamming his palm on the table. "This is a damn ambush. She got fired for leaking classified docs. She's got no integrity, no clearance, no." His voice cracked under the weight of his panic. "She was obsessed with me." But Jasmine didn't flinch. She didn't even raise her voice. She pulled out one single page from the folder and held it up like a verdict. Then she spoke, calm, cold, and brutal. "If she's lying," she said, "why does this email contain your login credential? Why does it trace back to a timestamp registered to your secure government-issued terminal? Why does the location match your DC office at midnight?" The room didn't fall silent. It fell dead. Not a single breath dared move. Reporters froze mid-keystroke. Even the live feed cameras seemed to hesitate. Because this wasn't just another accusation. This wasn't speculation. It was proof sharpened into a blade. And Jasmine had just driven it through his last defense. Jasmine hadn't moved. She didn't need to. The paper still hovered in her hand like a sword not yet sheathed, and across the table Kash Patel was visibly unraveling. His jaw clenched, his eyes darted, but the bravado was gone. Something had broken, and the room knew it. It was the look of a man no longer fighting to win, but scrambling to contain the wreckage. His voice cracked when it finally came. "Fine," he muttered, barely above a whisper. "There was a playbook." He paused, swallowing the last shred of control. "It was informal, a system, used by a few of us to manage communication outside official logs." He looked down, ashamed to meet anyone's eyes. 5 people, maybe more. It was about protecting sensitive operations, that's all. But Jasmine didn't even blink. She let the confession sit in the air, just long enough to rot. Then she reached for a new page, pulled it free like a detonator, and read one name. One word. Devlin. The effect was instant. A shiver went through the room like someone had just whispered a curse. One staffer gasped. A member of the committee stiffened in his chair. Cameras refocused. Even seasoned intelligence officers in the back row froze, their faces suddenly pale. That name, Devlin, had never been spoken aloud in any official setting. He was a ghost in national security circles, a shadow no one could trace, a myth, until now. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "This isn't about one rogue staffer," she said, her tone slicing through the tension like glass under pressure. "This isn't about a few deleted messages or an unauthorized memo." Her hand hovered over the folder. This was never chaos. It was coordination. She leaned forward, locking eyes with Patel as she delivered the final blow. "What you called a playbook was a blueprint for escaping accountability, and you followed it, line by line." The silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was fear. Because in that moment, everyone in the chamber realized Jasmine Crockett hadn't just exposed a man. She had exposed a machine. The room hadn't exhaled since the name Devlin left Jasmine's lips. People sat frozen, as if a line had been crossed they never imagined real. Some stared at the floor, others locked their eyes on Patel, watching him shrink inch by inch beneath the fluorescent lights. He looked like a man surrounded not by enemies, but by the consequences of a truth too long buried. No denial could save him now. No memo, no smirk, no shield. Jasmine didn't push further. She didn't need to. The silence she'd carved with her words was doing the damage. And the chairman, who until now had remained firm but restrained, knew what needed to happen. His gavel didn't strike. His voice alone shifted the atmosphere. "In light of the testimony and documentation presented," he said, each syllable heavy with purpose, "this committee will proceed with an emergency vote." His tone was not dramatic, it was judicial. It was history unfolding. Motion to transfer all classified materials, verified testimony, and supporting metadata to the United States Department of Justice for immediate federal investigation. No one dared move at first. Then hands began to raise, not hurried, not performative, but solemn. Some raised their hand like they were lifting something heavier than their own vote, like they knew this wasn't just about Patel. It was about the system. The silence that followed each hand was its own thunder. 11 hands in total. 2 stayed down. The final result didn't need to be shouted. It landed like a sentence passed, 11-2. And that's when Patel broke. His chair clattered backward as he sprang to his feet, rage suddenly unchained. "You don't have the authority," he roared, voice hoarse, eyes wide with desperation. "You don't have the right to hand this over. This is political revenge. This is a damn witch hunt." He was no longer measured, no longer composed, just a man unraveling in real time, clawing at power that no longer listened. No one shouted back. No one needed to. His words echoed, but they fell on something harder than opposition: consequence. Then Jasmine rose, calm, controlled. But in her stillness, there was more strength than in all of Patel's rage. She looked at him, not to provoke, not to punish, but to finish what had already collapsed. Her voice was clear, sharp, final. "We don't take authority from you," she said. "We take it from the Constitution." There were no cheers, no applause, just a sudden, silent wave. People stood, not in celebration, but because truth had weight. And when it finally lands, even the powerful are forced to rise and face it. The vote was done, the hearing adjourned. But what had just happened inside those congressional walls didn't stay inside for long. It spilled out like a tidal wave, louder, faster, and more explosive than anyone was ready for. Within minutes, clips of the hearing dominated national broadcasts. Jasmine's voice, "We take it from the Constitution," was replayed across every major network. It was no longer just a quote. It had become a line in history. Anchors who had started their day with scripted bulletins now looked straight into the camera, trying to explain something that even they couldn't fully process. A system hidden in shadows had just been pulled into the light, and the country could feel the weight of it. On social media, people weren't arguing. They were watching, rewatching, sharing. Thousands of posts broke down Jasmine's final words: Patel's collapse, the vote count, the phrase W staff line. It didn't matter whether you were a journalist or a college student. Suddenly, everyone was trying to piece together how deep this went. One comment beneath a viral clip read simply, "This wasn't just a hearing. It was a confession with cameras on." That single sentence seemed to capture what millions were starting to understand. But somewhere else, off the grid, far from likes and retweets, another voice entered the scene. In a private, encrypted forum used by government leakers and digital activists, a single message appeared. No name, no timestamp. Just 7 words that cut straight through the noise. "Echo Wren here. The W staff line is just the surface. You haven't seen the names I have." That was it. No follow-up, no proof. But to those who had followed Echo Wren for years, it was enough. This was the same anonymous cyber entity that had once exposed the silent purge of intelligence files in 2016. The same figure believed to have sent classified alerts to journalists before going dark. If Echo Wren was active again, it meant something worse was coming. And it wasn't just talk. Within the hour, cybersecurity specialists began reporting anomalies. Ghost logins from machines that were supposedly deactivated, alerts from internal government firewalls, quiet pings from servers buried deep inside non-disclosed data centers. Some called it paranoia, others called it warning shots. Either way, Washington was no longer just reacting, it was bracing. At the center of the storm, Jasmine Crockett returned to her office. It was nearly 1 in the morning. The building was nearly empty. She walked in slowly, her heels echoing off the marble like the only heartbeat left in the Capitol. On her chair sat a small, sealed envelope. No return address. Just her name, typed in plain black, all capital letters. Inside was a single silver USB drive. No label, no markings, and a folded note that said only, Check March 17th logs. They missed something. No signature, no threat, just a sentence, and a silence that said everything else. Jasmine didn't speak. She didn't move. But she knew exactly what this meant. The real operation wasn't over. It had just stepped out of the dark. It began not with a bang, but with a whisper. The kind of whisper that changes everything. Jasmine stood still at the center of the storm, her fingers wrapped around a small black remote. The lights dimmed slightly, not by design, but as if the air itself understood the gravity of what was coming. She didn't grandstand. She didn't raise her voice. She simply held up a sheet of paper, then said into the microphone with surgical calm, "Let the record reflect. This recording was extracted from March the 17th, internal archive node C-4. She pressed play. At first there was just the sound of static, a quiet cold hum like wind through a vault. Then it came. Avoid emails, use encryption. If questioned, deny. The voice was clear, director, mechanical in tone, but unmistakably human. And worse, unmistakably his. For a moment no one breathed. The words weren't long. They weren't complex, but they didn't need to be. In 10 seconds they shattered every excuse, every denial, every paper-thin defense built over weeks of testimony. This wasn't a memo. It wasn't hearsay. It was Kash Patel, captured in his own voice, giving instructions that no oath could unwrite. Jasmine paused the recording. Her face didn't change. No smirk, no anger. Just the calm precision of someone with the truth on her side. Then came the question. Sharp, steady, and spoken like the final thread in a rope already snapping. "Is that your voice, Mr. Patel?" The silence stretched. Seconds ticked by like weights being dropped one at a time. Patel didn't answer immediately. His jaw locked. His eyes scanned the room. Committee members, cameras, counsel, nowhere to run. The tension in his shoulders, the twitch in his hand. He was searching for a version of this moment that didn't exist. But there was none. He swallowed hard. "Yes," he said. There it was. No excuses, no spin. Just a quiet confession that hit the room harder than a scream. No one stood up. Not yet. But the atmosphere changed instantly. Reporters lowered their pens. One aide put their hand over their mouth. You could feel it. That invisible shift from witnessing a debate to watching the collapse of a defense. Then slowly, people began to rise. Not in applause, not in protest, but as if the sheer weight of truth required it. It wasn't a hearing anymore. It was a verdict, and the evidence wasn't paper. It was Patel's voice, echoing through the walls. Cold, calculated, and impossible to take back. The room had emptied, but the weight of what happened remained suspended in the air like smoke after a fire. No applause, no grand finale. Just the heavy silence that always follows a truth too big to forget. Kash Patel had said yes. The world had heard it, and no one, not the networks, not the parties, not even the skeptics, could make it go away. But as fast as it happened, Patel vanished. There was no press statement, no follow-up interview, no appearance at the courthouse steps. One by one, his scheduled appearances were canceled, then scrubbed entirely. Cable news anchors who had once praised his discipline under pressure now danced around his name with rehearsed neutrality. Within 48 hours, his social media accounts were deactivated. The only trace left was a handful of grainy headlines about his last words before disappearing into silence. Reporters waited. Cameras camped outside his residence. His legal team offered no comments, nothing. No denials, no spin. Just a hollow space where the noise used to be. And as Patel faded, all eyes turned to the woman who hadn't just questioned him, but dismantled him. Jasmine Crockett had become a lightning rod, not because she wanted the spotlight, but because she never flinched under it. Her inbox filled with interview requests. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, The Daily Show, podcasts, publishers, book deals, foundations offering speaking tours and awards, campaign operatives testing the waters, whispering about statewide office. Everyone wanted a piece of the moment. Everyone wanted a piece of her. She declined them all. Not out of defiance, not even out of strategy, but because none of them understood what this moment really was. When asked, by her chief of staff, by her closest friends, by the press camped outside her office, why she wouldn't capitalize on it, she gave the same answer every time. Calm, centered, quiet but unshakable. "If I don't ask," she said, "then who will?" It was just a sentence, 7 words, but those words did what thousands of hours of shouting never could. They stuck. Within 24 hours, her quote was everywhere, stenciled across murals in Baltimore, Houston, and Oakland, printed on shirts in protest marches and street pop-ups, pinned to message boards in classrooms, college dorms, and federal offices. One school principal in St. Louis had it painted in 5-inch letters above the auditorium door. A high school teacher in New Jersey printed it on every civics exam. Even a major publishing house announced that it would open the next edition of its government textbook with Jasmine's photo, and that single quote printed in bold above it. She never asked for it to go viral. She never branded it, never copyrighted it. She didn't need to. The country had claimed it for itself. But just as the wave of attention began to crest, just when the noise seemed to finally reach its peak, a new sound entered the story. Silence, and then something beneath it. At 12:47 a.m., inside a dimly lit congressional office, Jasmine returned from a long day with no cameras, no reporters, and no rehearsed applause. Her staff had gone home hours ago. She moved quietly, her heels echoing off the polished floor as she stepped into her private workspace. The only light came from the screensaver still glowing on her laptop. She set her bag down, poured herself a glass of water, then noticed it, an alert in the corner of the screen. One new message, no subject, no sender. She sat down, wary, clicked it open. There was no body text, no formatting, no attachments, just a single line. "I was part of it. I'm ready to talk. Devlin." She read it once, then again, and again. The office suddenly felt colder, not in fear, but in gravity. This was the name that had hovered like a ghost over the entire investigation. The man mentioned only in whispers, the rumored architect behind the curtain, the name that had made even Patel go quiet. And now, Devlin had spoken. No signature, no return address. Just those 13 words. The weight of it sank into her slowly. Not like a punch, but like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing the ground behind you has disappeared. She didn't stand. She didn't speak. She just stared at the screen, her hand still resting on the mouse, the cursor blinking in that empty white space below the message. Outside, the city was sleeping. Inside her office, the past had just turned into a warning. The battle people thought was over? It hadn't even started. And the voice America never thought they'd hear. It was ready to be heard. The email sat there like a trigger, unpulled but loaded. And in that moment, Jasmine didn't see a victory. She saw a question, not just from Devlin, but from the system, from the country, from history itself. The kind of question that doesn't get asked in headlines, but in the quiet, when no one's watching. This story was never about politics. It was about responsibility, about what happens when silence becomes currency and power is traded behind closed doors. Jasmine didn't step into the fire because she wanted to win. She stepped in because someone had to ask. And sometimes the one who asks isn't the loudest. They're just the one who refuses to look away. The real message? Justice doesn't move unless someone pushes it. Not because the law is broken, but because it was built to wait. It waits for people with the nerve to speak, to stand, to disrupt the ritual of pretending everything's fine. Jasmine Crockett didn't expose corruption to go viral. She did it because truth, no matter how dangerous, is still the only thing worth risking everything for. Because if we all stay quiet, the system stays exactly the same. Thank you for watching until this moment and for standing with us on this journey for justice. Your support means everything. Like subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know what moved you most in this story. Together, our voices make a difference.